Hello, right, so you guys asked for some tips around how to manage our minds going blank. So throughout this video, I'll share with you a few little tips that I have. I'll also share with you a little bit of information and probably touch on some personal experiences of my own. It's really important that you only take away what actually feels relatable and what resonates with you. We're all different and we're all unique, so we all have our own stuff going on, and some of my own personal experiences may not directly resonate with your own. So yeah, take what you want, leave what doesn't feel relatable. Okay, so mind going blank. Yes, this is something that I experienced a lot of. If I'm being truthful, I still do experience it from time to time. So a couple of weeks ago, actually, in the app as well, I think we had a little bit of a conversation around it, and the image that came up for me when I was thinking about what happens when my mind goes blank is that it's almost like, I've got all these little thoughts in my head, and if those thoughts were like little characters, then what happens sometimes in social situations is that those characters or those thoughts, they get a little bit scared, and they essentially run off into all the corners and hide themselves behind curtains. And then later on, after, like, away from that social situation, it's almost as if they then feel safe enough to re-emerge and come back out. So that's what came up for me when I think about what happens in those moments when my mind goes blank, and especially when that used to happen a lot. And really kind of what that says to me is that it's basically a self-protective coping strategy. So when we do feel anxious or when we do feel a bit fearful, our bodies are going to try to respond in a way to keep us safe and to keep us protected, basically. I mean, it's trying to do its best to care and look out for us. Obviously, as we grow up, this might not always be that helpful, and it might not always be something that serves us anymore or something that we actually want anymore. So we can, in one respect, offer ourselves some compassion towards that, recognize that it's trying to do a good thing, it's trying to be caring, and yeah, be a little bit kinder towards that. I mean, I bang on about this a lot, but I mean, self-compassion to me is like one of the most beneficial things that we can learn to practice in order to support ourselves in these challenging situations. And it also really helps us to find a sense of acceptance. So if it does happen, then it doesn't feel so bad, essentially. So my first tip then is probably to do some self-compassion practices and to offer yourself some acceptance and some kindness around it. It is okay if your mind goes blank. I think the majority of us experience it in some situations. You may feel like you experience it more than others, or you may feel like you're the only person that does. I know that I used to feel that way. And I used to feel like nobody else ever experienced that from the outside it looked like everybody else just knew what to say and when to say it and had no problem just saying whatever it is that they wanted to. As I've grown up, I've realised that that's not actually the case, and some people's response to actually feeling nervous is just to blur out, and do they call it, like verbal diarrhea or something, so they actually speak without having any idea of what it is that they're saying. So I mean, we all respond in different ways to this. Obviously, the majority of us in this space, we have quite a lot of avoidance behaviours and techniques around managing anxiety. So our mind going blank is one of those ways in which we are really trying to protect ourselves. So compassion, practicing self-compassion is definitely one of the ways in which we can learn to ease that. And what I love about compassion actually is that the more you practice it, and the more it alleviates the anxiety that comes with even like after you've been in a situation where your mind's gone blank. I know that can also lead to feeling anxious afterwards as well, and then feeling anxious about entering another situation where it might possibly happen. Is that if you practice self-compassion in between those moments or like after that situation, then it can actually help to alleviate some of the anxiety beforehand and afterwards. So it is a really, really beneficial practice and tool to use. So the other thing that I find that is quite often associated with your mind going blank is that if you are an introvert, then as introverts, and I'm an introvert myself, as introverts we naturally have a slower processing time than those who are more extroverted. So, and I should have maybe touched up on a little bit of my research to remember exactly what's happening, but if I remember correctly, there is something within our wiring that means that we go through like a much longer like filtering process in order to access memories or access facts and figures or whatever it is, just basically access our own thoughts in some respect. We have like a slightly longer process that we go through and a slightly different wiring. It's not so straightforward and linear, and that in itself can cause a little bit of a delay in then actually having something to respond with. So again, finding some acceptance around if you are an introvert, that actually it's okay that you have a slower processing time, and give yourself permission to allow yourself to pause before responding. So if you do need that moment to actually think before you speak, which so many of us do, I mean, like half of us in this world are introverts, so really like a lot of us need those pauses to respond, then it is okay to say, can I just have a moment to think about that? Or I know like a delay tactic that a lot of people use is to start with, well, that's really interesting, let me think about that, and then allow yourself that time to just process and then allow those thoughts to come up. My final tip that I would share also then is another one that we talk about a lot, and that would be doing some breathing beforehand. Oh, and also actually listening skills. Actually, I'll touch on that one first. I'll touch on listening first. So quite often when we are in the company of other people, we are quite often listening to reply, which means that we're not actually listening to what the person is saying, and instead we're more internally focused in terms of like trying to think up, like, what am I going to say in response to this? So, and for quite a few of us, that can actually induce a little bit of panic within us, and then, you know, those little thoughts go, nope, run away. So so again, like if you shift your focus onto, I'm actually just going to listen to you to understand what it is that you're saying, and then once you've fully understood what that person is saying, allowed yourself that processing time, give yourself permission to think about what it is that you want to say, and then maybe incorporate a little bit of breathing to help calm any nerves that you might be feeling, and then you can respond. Yeah, I would probably say that those are my top tips in managing these situations. Something that I like to say a lot is that this is all about practice. Relieve yourself of any pressure to enter a social situation and feel like you have to have the perfect responses. So it is about practice, and we touch a lot more on some techniques and some tools that would be really helpful for managing mind blankness actually in our quiet speaking toolkit, so that might be something that actually you want to go have a look at and see if that would be of benefit to you. We share a lot of tools in there which is all about helping us feel calmer and less panicked in social situations, so that we can actually respond more calmly, confidently, and speak more clearly. Actually just say the things that we want to say. So yeah, perhaps go and have a little look at that. It is a very good course, if I say so myself. Bit of shameless promotion. And yeah, I hope that there was at least something within this that either gave you a little bit of insight, something that you might feel like, well, actually I can go and practice that, or has at least intrigued your curiosity to consider what else might be going on, or where else you might take your progress or study to dig a little deeper into what's happening for you, or other areas to explore to see what else might actually work for you. So yes, that would be my little tidbit on mind blankness. Thank you.